Okay, today I need to make some LAB, which is lactic acid bacteria. I do use a lot of this stuff, particularly in the garden outside. I do use it in my grows as well. I even give it to my dog. He really likes it. It's good for them too, as far as digestion and stuff like that. And in the long run, you'll see after this, it's going to be a byproduct that's made um, when you make this, and it's actually a cheese. And it's pretty good actually, and it's very, very beneficial for you. So I like to eat it myself. I'll also give it to my dog. My dog really, really likes it, and he's got all kinds of GI issues, so it really does help him in the long run too. So, but we can get into that later. For now, let's see. We've got 2 jars. Each of these jars has 2 cups of water, and then I've got a cup of rice, and then another cup of rice here. So what you basically want to do, this is very simple. You want to just put your rice into the water, put a cap on it, try to put a cap on it. I think this cap's a little hot. There we go. And then just shake it up. Now I get from my buddies always ask if it's cold water or hot water, and I've tried both. Honestly, I like cold water better. I find that when I've used warmer water, it tends to it just doesn't turn out as good. I don't know, something with the temperature. I think it just ferments wrong. So I usually just use room temperature water right out of the tap. Doesn't matter, hot, cold, whatever. I'm sorry, should be cold. Next, you want to pour it into another jar or vessel, whatever, that's going to fit at least your 4 cups. Because you're going to put both of them in here. Didn't quite think this through when I put it into this little container. Should have used a different container for this, but we're gonna work. All right, good enough. Same thing, shake it up. Oh, and if I didn't show you this on the bottom, obviously this has a screen in the bottom of this funnel. So here. And then just cover it up with something breathable. I use paper towel. You can use cheesecloth or whatever else, as long as it's breathable. And then you're going to want to put this somewhere dark, preferably. You don't want sunlight hitting the stuff. So I usually just put it in a cabinet, or I'll put it in the basement. It's dark down in my basement, and it's about 60 degrees down there though, so it's a little cool right now. Summertime, I'll put it down there, but ideally you want to put it somewhere that's room temperature, at least 70, 72 degrees, or and a little up higher than that. But you don't really want any lower, because then this takes forever, and sometimes it just doesn't ferment right. So you want to make sure that it's somewhere at least 70, 72 degrees minimum. I wouldn't go any higher than like 85. Then I've had that extreme too, where it starts fermenting too quickly, and if you don't catch it right, it will go rancid. So, and then you got to do this all over again. So just keep an eye on it. Put it somewhere out of the dark, in the dark, and in those temperature ranges, and just check it at least once a day. And then once, well, I'll show you. We'll come back to that. Okay, so obviously you can use a bigger jar or whatever it is to mix that all together, as long as you've got your 2 cups of rice and your 4 cups of water. I just find it easier that way for demonstration purposes, and plus I don't have a real big jar that has a nice lid to actually shake it up, so I have those little liter, or they're not exactly a liter, but I've got those jars all over the place because I can my vegetables and stuff from the garden. So I just use those because it's easy. But obviously, if you've got a bigger container that you can mix it all in, by all means, mix it all at one time and get it done and over with. Labs is really beneficial, especially in the garden. But the reason that we use it, I use it in the grows, is well, it's the same reason I use it out in the garden. It does help break down organic matter. In the grow room, particularly your amendments that you put into the soil. It will help decompose those, break them down faster, especially with some of these microorganisms and bacteria that we add to the soil. They'll all, in conjunction, help break all this stuff down faster, make it more plant available, ready for when your plant actually needs it. It's there and it's ready for your plant to consume. That's why I use it. So, okay, so now we just wait. I'm going to put it in the cupboard, and I'm going to keep it in there. It'll probably take a couple days, but I mean, check it every day just in case. And when it gets to the different stages, I will show you guys. So this is roughly 24 hours later. I know this isn't exactly a great picture. I apologize, but you don't want to disturb it, so I can't really take it out of here, and I've got it in a dark closet. So, but if you can't see, it's starting to get like some foamy action on top, and it's starting to develop a little layer of soot, basically, and that's what you want. So that's that layer, and then yeah, if you sniff it through your lid, it should still smell sweet, obviously, because it's not fermented yet. But as the days go on, you sniff that, you'll notice it'll start to go sour, and you'll smell that transition. And that's really when we want to start harvesting the culture, and then it'll be ready to brew. So about another day or two, this should be ready. This is 48 hours later. Again, sorry, I know this isn't the best, but I can't move the jar, and this is the best light I can get right now. But if you can tell, it's just got this, there we go, that's better, like just a light foamy. It's getting thicker and thicker on the sides, but when you put my nose to it, it still smells sweet, so it's definitely not ready. You'll start to smell it. So we'll come back tomorrow. This is 72 hours, and it's starting to get real foamy. And actually, now that I sniff it, I can just start to smell it's starting to get sour, but I can still smell sweet. So if you still smell that sweet, you want to wait just a little bit longer. So I'm thinking this will be ready by tomorrow. We will try again. And here is day 4. I took the top off here to give you guys a little better view. And as you can see, there is this nice thick layer growing on the top here. And it still smells pretty, very, oh, I shouldn't say pretty, but it's got just a slight sweet smell to it still. And a little hint of sour, but we want it to be a little bit more sour. So we're gonna wait until tomorrow, and it should be done tomorrow. And here we are 5 days into the ferment, and this is definitely starting to smell a little sour today. So we're gonna use this today. You want to mix this as 1 part of your starter, basically, and 10 parts milk. So there's 128 ounces in a gallon. That's going to be roughly 12.8 ounces of starter fluid, or just 12 to 13 to make it easy. It doesn't have to be exact, just you want your ratios pretty close. So let's start by taking this off. Now you want to get as much of this film off as possible. So you want to use the fluid, you don't want the sludge on the top. So I just get it to the side, and it's usually one big mat, so it's actually pretty easy. And then just scoop out what you can. Sometimes you need a little smaller spoon. I mean, if you don't get all of it, it's not going to be the end of the world, but get as much of that top mat out as you can. Okay. And we're gonna measure out our liquid. Once we get that measured out, we want to pour our milk in. Now this has got to be whole milk, preferably organic, but it's definitely got to be whole milk. You cannot use 2% or skim milk or anything like that. It has to be whole milk. And dump your starter in there. Give it a little mix. And you're just gonna put your top back on. Okay, so now we're gonna let this sit and ferment for probably about another 3 to 5 days. And what's gonna happen is that lactic acid bacteria is gonna start consuming the lactic acid in here, or sorry, the lactose, and it's gonna actually separate. So you'll get this film, and it's always different, so don't quote me on this, but usually it will separate where the liquid goes on the bottom, and it will form this, oh, look at that. It will form this solid mat. And once that happens, that's when we want to separate it. And we'll take the liquid, and then that solid mat is actually going to be the byproduct, which we can turn into, it's basically a farmhouse cheese is what it is. And it's very, very beneficial for you too. So it's full of all kinds of good microbial life and all that good stuff that's good for your gut. So, all right, we're going to put this somewhere, you know, dark again. You want it in a darker, cooler place. You don't want it really, really hot. And we're just going to check back in this every couple days, and we'll show you the progress as this starts to separate. Okay, so here we are 2 days later. And this morning when I woke up, it was actually this much liquid to right here, and this was all solid up to the top here. So 5-6 hours have gone by, and now you can see it's gone from here this morning to here. So I just wait it out until it stops compressing. Once you find that it gets to where it doesn't move anymore and it's going to stay at that tight, that's when you want to separate these solids from the liquid, which is a lot harder, harder than it sounds. So this stuff is pretty much like freaking cottage cheese. So it's very, very unstable and brittle. So that in mind, when you choose your vessel to put this in, make sure you have a big enough top that you can get in there and get this stuff out, because if you get like a real small top on this, you're never going to get this stuff out of here. So this is a 2-gallon jar, and it's got a nice wide mouth at the top, so I would be able to get in there, and I'll show it to you when I do it, and you'll see sometimes you get it out, sometimes you don't, but you just want to try and keep the two separate as best as you possibly can. And if you do end up getting some bigger chunks in there and stuff, you do want to strain it out. So we'll see what we have to do once we finally separate this. I'm going to give it a little longer and see if it's going to compress anymore. This is 4 days later, so now you can see how much liquid there is. It is actually only about this thick now, and it's starting to smell a lot better too. So you'll notice like this, it really smells pretty sour, and after a couple of days of it sitting, it starts to get a little more earthy smell, as this actually consumes the milk product or whatever is left on here, and it turns it into basically a farmhouse cheese. So we're going to separate this as best we can. It's easier said than done, but as I said, this stuff falls apart pretty easily. So what we've got here is a strainer with a screen in the bottom, and we actually have another one here too, just to strain out as much of this junk as we possibly can. I've actually tried taking chunks of this stuff out little by little and putting it into another vessel, and that just tends to fall apart and makes all kinds of little chunks inside. So I found actually the best way is to just pour out as much of the liquid as you possibly can, and then just take out what's ever left after that. So let's get into it. Just kind of go very slow. You want to try and keep this thing together. You don't want it to fall apart. Once that happens, it just becomes a freaking mess. And this, by the way, is a gallon jar. All right, that's good enough. We don't have to get every piece of it. All right, once you got the liquid separated, just line a colander with some cheesecloth, and you want to get a nice good layer too, because this stuff is got a little weight to it. So see, it's just like cottage cheese. It's pretty much what it's same consistency as cottage cheese. So yeah. Well, now you want to get as much of the liquid out as you possibly can. So what we're going to do is just squeeze as much as we can out, and then once you get as much of this liquid out as you can like this, we're actually going to make kind of a makeshift press with some weight on top of it and let this sit overnight. And then tomorrow you'll see it'll be a perfectly little thing of cheese. So let me get as much water out of this as I can right now. I'm not going to bore you on film. It's going to take a good 5-10 minutes, and then once I get the press going on there, I'll come back. Now we've got our most of the water out of here, and as you can see, we've got this got this nice big chunk basically of cheese that's going to form. So wrap this up as tight as you can. Just twist it and twist it and twist it. Okay, put it down in your colander. I just got the colander in the bottom of the sink. What I do is take a saucer, put the saucer over the top, flatten it down as good as you can, then put a rag on top of that, and then just add some weight. And that'll help. It'll keep getting more and more of that liquid out. And we're just going to keep this like this overnight. I got 15 pounds on this right now. And then we're just going to let this sit. And we'll come back tomorrow morning and we'll show you what it looks like. Oh, I didn't explain the reason we have the weight on here. The reason we have the weight on here is because we want to get as much of the liquid out of that cheese as possible, because that will make it more solid and it'll last a lot longer. If there's any liquid left in that cheese when you're done, it will go foul faster. And this stuff will, the more liquid you get out of it, I've got maybe a week out of this cheese sometimes, versus sometimes when I was lazy and I didn't squeeze as much of that liquid out as I could, it lasted maybe 3 days, 4 tops. So it's a big difference. So yeah. Okay, now this has been sitting all night. Now we're gonna unwrap it. I had to put a lot of cheesecloth because this stuff was like really wasn't very thin. The holes were pretty big. Okay, here we go. And there we go. There we go. Just falling apart. And then this is what it looks like. Unfortunately, the cheesecloth I had, the holes were pretty big. So it should have been a lot finer and it would have stuck together a lot better. So, but it is what it is. This is still good. So I'm going to put this in the fridge. And it's really good with a little olive oil and a little salt on it. And sometimes a little basil too. If you got a little basil, it's really good with it. So then we're going to put this away and we'll have some of this tomorrow.